You're making a movie, and it's really exciting. It's one of the most collaborative forms of creativity there is. Tell good stories is probably the most important thing. I see a lot of student films are really unimpressive, but then
Okay.
every once in a while you see a film that literally humbles you.
Joining me today is Dave Walvoord, and he is a cinematographer at Sunrise Animation. So, Dave, welcome and thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Of course. So, let's go ahead and get started, Dave. In the most simple way, can you explain to me what a cinematographer does?
Yeah, so I'm in animation specifically, but it's very similar to live action. It's just instead of happening on set, it happens all virtually in a computer.
Okay.
So my role is really to supervise camera, blocking, and lighting for the movie. This is my first time in the role. Um, Usually in animation, it's split up between camera blocking and lighting. So I came up through the lighting pass, um,
Okay.
but now I'm doing all of it for the first time. It's pretty exciting.
Okay. And what made you want to get into this career path, and how did you get your start in it?
My career started in live action visual effects, so doing visual effects for movies,
Okay.
um, and then I was at Blue Sky, and we made Bunny, which was an animated short, which won the Academy Award in I think 1998. And then we did the first Ice Age, and ever since then, I've done almost no live action, very little,
Okay.
um, and it's all been animation. And
Okay.
or I just say I got into it because I just love computer graphics. I went to Texas A&M as well, and did the Viz Lab, and kind of fell in love with computer graphics and light. And this was one of the few paths probably in computer graphics back in
Mhm.
1998 when I started.
Okay. And now, what parts of your job are the most exciting or the most interesting to you?
I think the most it's hard to say what's most interesting because I love all aspects of the job. I mean, you're making a movie,
Mhm.
and it's really exciting. It's one of the most collaborative forms of creativity there is. The crew size is probably 200 people right now. Um,
Okay.
but I work very closely with the director, the production designer, the VFX supervisor, um, and it's just a lot of fun to see it all come together on the screen.
Yeah. And now, on the flip side, what parts of the job are harder, emotionally challenging, or maybe just not so fun for you?
So making movies is like really hard. It's really hard. And it's the hard part is really creative, because you're
Okay.
trying to tell a story, and turn it into a movie. And so in the animation process, we start with storyboards and an edit and put it together in an animatic, and we watch it. And then it comes to me to start turning into 3D. And quite frequently, we find that what plays well in an animatic and 2D storyboards
Mm.
completely doesn't translate to
Oh,
3D.
wow.
And so then we have this giant puzzle
Yeah.
about how we communicate this that we're trying to that's just not working. Um,
Okay.
and that's the hard part, but it's also really fun,
Yeah.
because you get to be really creative.
Okay. And now, what do you think that people might underestimate or overestimate about this job?
That's a good question. Before I was a cinematographer, I started out as a lighting TD and then a lighter and then a
Okay.
CG supervisor. And in all those roles, so one of the things they may underestimate is how difficult this career path is. As of right now, no one just comes out of school as a cinematographer. Um, but and it's also a lot of hours. That's the other
Okay.
thing as well.
And now, within cinematography, are there specific niches that people can choose to specialize in?
A little bit. So if you look at Pixar, Disney, DreamWorks, those three separate my role into two roles. So there's a
Okay.
cinematographer. They might call it director of photography lighting or cinematographer lighting, and the same cinematographer camera or something similar to that. Niches in cinematography. To get where I am, it's a little bit of previs or layout, and a little bit of lighting, a little bit, a lot of things.
Hmm.
So in that career path, you can come up as a more of a specialist, until you broaden out over time.
Okay.
Like,
Okay. And now, who are some of the biggest employers of this field?
so there's not a lot of cinematographers on animated movies in the world. There's a lot
Okay.
more for live action. The biggest
Okay.
employers for sure would be Disney, Pixar, Netflix, Sony, and DreamWorks. Even those are small companies. They're not like
Okay.
Google or Meta.
Okay, so now according to my Google research, the average income for a cinematographer is around $100,000 in the US. So from your experience or what you know about that, do you think that's an accurate representation?
That seems really low to me.
Okay.
It, it's it. I would say it's really low for feature animation. There's a lot
Okay.
of TV content, and that sounds a bit more right. If you're doing television animation,
Okay.
but when you get into the union studios like DreamWorks and Disney, the salaries are much better.
And now, what are some current trends or challenges in this industry, and how do you see it changing in the next 5 to 10 years?
The big challenge right now has to do with government policy, actually.
Okay.
So countries like Canada, France, Australia, and I think England as well are offering big tax incentives.
Mm.
Um, so, for example, if you're making a movie in Australia, they'll literally give you 50% discount to make the movie in Australia. Because of that, most of the actual making of movies has moved outside of the United States now. It used to be
Oh.
a lot of jobs in the US.
Hmm.
Um, Now it's more the previous part of the job is sticking pretty close to the US a lot of times, because they like to keep it close to the directors and story. But
Okay.
the other parts of making movies have really gone overseas. And that's one part of the reason I'm in Cape Town at
Hmm.
Sunrise.
Oh, and do you see that staying like that in the next coming years, or do you see that changing?
There's only a couple of ways I could see that changing. Right now, the federal government is such a mess that it doesn't feel like they're capable of taking on anything big, much less something as small as,
Yeah.
animation tax credits. But it would be very solvable if they would either uh, offer the same incentives. Um,
Hmm.
a company like DreamWorks or Disney would probably much rather keep everything in the US,
Yeah.
if it was a level playing field. But it's just not, it's not level anymore.
Okay. And how do you stay updated with the latest developments of your field?
I've got a fairly good network of people I've worked with. I've been doing this over 20 years,
Wow.
26 years. So,
Wow.
um, yeah,
Yeah.
you talk to people and you find out.
Okay, so now going into kind of your daily work and your schedule, what's your schedule like and what tasks do you spend the majority of your day doing?
So I spend 6 months out of the year in Cape Town while I'm at Sunrise and 6 months back at my home in Los Angeles.
Okay.
When I'm in Cape Town, it's really nice. I roll into the office around 8 or 9 and leave around
Hmm.
5 or 6. Um,
Okay.
when I'm in the United States, I'm up at like 3:30 in the morning
Wow.
because the time zone difference is so much.
Yeah.
And half of my team is in South Africa, and the other half is in the Americas, whether it's Canada
Okay.
or the United States. So
Okay.
the time zone differences are really challenging.
Wow. And within your workday, what do you see that you do? What are your tasks?
So I'm supervising camera blocking and lighting. So most
Okay.
of my day, that's actually a lot. It's a lot of the movie. So the way you do that is you have crews that you
Okay.
delegate a lot to. So a good bit of my day is checking in and finding out how things are going and
Mm.
talking about what we're doing and people showing me things.
Yeah.
Another good part of my day is troubleshooting and setting up the pipeline. So I'm fully in production and pre-production, or
Okay.
in previs, fully in previs right now. We're going full steam, but lighting is just starting to ramp up. So there, the challenges are a lot different. It's more about
Mm.
getting ready to make the movie at scale.
Okay. And now, maybe not for your role, but for cinematographers in general, do you think that this is a job where people can work flexible hours Is it a remote friendly job? What do you think about that?
No, probably to all of that. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I have to be. I have flexibility when I'm in Los Angeles because they respect the time zone.
Yeah.
But in general, I have to be online when the director's online. And in
Okay.
live action, you go on set and you go where the shoot is and you shoot probably for 2 months straight, somewhere else, you know.
Okay. And would you say that you're able to leave all of your work at the office, or do you have to take some home sometimes?
I always leave it at home. When I'm on site, like at Sunrise, in the studio, as soon as I leave, yeah, I don't take it home with me, um,
Okay.
almost ever. Um,
Okay.
but when I'm in Los Angeles, it is a work from home situation,
Hmm.
and it's very easy to. I mean, your work is everywhere, so it's
Yeah.
very easy to just go into the office and start working because something's bugging you.
Okay, so now are there any busy seasons in this job? And if so, what are they?
But yeah, there's definitely busy seasons. But it's not calendar based so much as it is where you
Okay.
are in the production schedule. So when
Okay.
we're in pre-production, it's pretty easy. It's pretty flexible. When you get into the meat of production, then it's pretty much just go all the time.
Okay. And okay, so you mentioned that people don't graduate and become cinematographers right off the bat. So what's the most common career path for that? And what degrees or certifications are required to become a cinematographer?
So in animation, I don't think anyone comes out of school and becomes a
Okay.
cinema. Live
Okay.
action, you do see that. You see people come out of film school, but then mostly what I've observed is they may do shorts. Um,
Okay.
so they're much smaller projects and then try to build their resume and their portfolio that way.
Yeah.
Uh, but in animation, it's a lot more structured. Um,
Okay.
it maybe in TV, but I have trouble even believing that that you could come straight out of school. So generally, the two paths would be previs or lighting.
Okay. So now what natural strengths or talents do you think that someone has to have in order to be a good cinematographer?
You have to be really good at listening. um, I mean, that sounds funny, but that may be the most important part of the
Yeah.
job is because you're working for a director who has a vision, and you have a lot of influence on that. But ultimately, it all has to be a cohesive vision where the cinematography works with the production design, which works for the
Hmm.
costume design. So it all has to work together. So
Yeah.
you really have to listen to what we're all trying to accomplish. I will say one of the films I think did that best was Cruella. I thought across the board that was just solid in every way.
Wow. Good. So now, what do you end up thinking about all day as a cinematographer? What are some topics that you think people would have to be really interested in to enjoy this career?
The most important topic probably is story.
Okay.
Ultimately, and this isn't true for cinematographers alone. This is like everybody that does animation, I think. At the
Hmm.
end of the day, we're storytellers. So
Okay.
that's always the first thing I think about with every shot in the film is what is the story we're trying to tell and how does it
Yeah.
relate to the shots around. So that's where it starts. After that, good eye for composition, for lighting, um, a lot of very basic art principles are
Mm.
important. In
Okay.
animation, there happens to be some technical principles as well, because it is all done on a computer and it's all computer graphics.
Yeah.
Um, you do have to understand that as well, generally.
Okay. Okay. And now, what are some tools or technologies, programs, or softwares that you use as part of your job?
I use Photoshop and Houdini quite a lot. Arnold is the
Okay.
renderer. Um,
Okay.
we also use Maya. Um, those are probably the biggest ones.
Okay. And now, going into some advice for our listeners, what do you recommend that candidates that are interested in this job do to set themselves apart from other candidates?
Tell good stories is probably the most important thing. I see a lot of student films
Mhm.
that are really unimpressive. But then
Okay.
every once in a while, you see a film that literally humbles you
Mm.
because you can't believe the story that a bunch of college students are telling. Um,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
this is my third year to judge the Student Academy Awards. Um,
Mm.
so every year there'll be a couple that just absolutely blow me away.
Okay. And is the Student Academy Awards, is that a good place to be like recognized as a cinematographer for your future career if you're still a student? Yeah.
Absolutely. If you get nominated for Student Academy Awards, your career is off to an amazing start.
Okay. Amazing.
It's not limited to that. The Student Academy Awards do have some rules that limit who can apply. Um,
Okay.
one of them is you have to be an accredited animation school, um,
Mm.
at an accredited animation school. So that knocks a good number of programs out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's plenty of festivals outside of that, whether it's SIGGRAPH or Annecy. There's lots of venues. There's lots of venues for students to get their work seen.
Okay. Okay, so now if someone wants to make a pivot from another career into this one without going back to school, is that possible at all? And how would they do it?
It is possible to do that, but it's difficult. Generally, to get hired in animation, you need a resume, a reel. The reel is the most important, or your portfolio.
Okay.
So you could self-teach yourself that and then do it, but that's a lot of work after hours.
Yeah.
Um, it's a lot more difficult to just say, "Oh, I'm tired of doing my current profession. I just want to go do animation." That's really tough. Um,
Yeah.
there are ways to do it that involve probably going through production management and then getting hired as like a coordinator or more likely a PA, production assistant,
Okay. Okay.
which is a non-creative role. Um, but I do know people that have done that because once you get into a big studio like DreamWorks as a production assistant, it's a it's a it's not a glamorous role by any means, but suddenly you have access to really nice equipment and really good artists, and a lot of them are very generous at mentoring. So it
Okay.
is possible, but it's generally not direct. Sorry, you
Okay.
could probably hear the rain starting.
No worries. Okay, so what are some books, resources, programs, or certifications, courses, all of those things that you recommend our listeners look into if they're interested?
I do think college education is really important.
Yeah.
Maybe not as important as it used to be, but it was really important to me. Um, there are other trade school type certifications. Animation Mentor comes to mind, which is one of the really effective ones. There's
Okay.
other kind of online programs like Gnomon, um, that you can go to as well. That plenty of people have gotten into the industry by doing that.
Now, finally, if you could talk to your younger self when you were just starting out in your career 20, 26 years ago, what would you tell him?
I think the biggest thing I would tell myself is this was being a cinematographer was a dream job. In fact, when I
Okay.
started, I didn't even know it was my dream. My dream was
Mhm.
something else. Um, and along the way, as you reach each milestone, you find out that there's another milestone you didn't realize you wanted. Um, so I think what I would tell myself is you just have to be patient. And I wasn't at times. Sometimes you just like, I don't know that this is working out.
Yeah.
Um, but so far, there's always been a pivot that I can grow.
Well, Dave, thank you so much. That is all that we have for today. Thank you for joining me on today's episode and sharing your experience as a cinematographer with us.
Thank you.
You just got one episode closer to learning about the world of jobs out there. To explore the rest of our career categories and find your best fit, go to jobdictionary.com to sign up for the beta users waitlist. Then subscribe here to find the next episodes coming out this week. And as always, drop us a comment, review, or message to let us know how we can better attune our episodes to your specific needs. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Threads, Pinterest, and wherever else you're on socials to go get our short, snappy preview reels that expose you to new job options every day. Because here at Job Dictionary, we believe your big aha moment can be just one scroll away. Go check it out and get out there. Cheers!